This is Joey J. Ping here, checking in live, respectmyregion.com, coming to you guys live from Costa Rica. Today, we've got another episode of the New York Cannabis Podcast brought to you guys by Trees.io, our premier partner for all things point of sale, data, analytics, e-commerce. You guys need it. Trees will help you grow your revenue if you're a retailer in the cannabis industry. We appreciate them for their sponsorship. Today, we've got a very special guest. We've got Vanessa Yee-Chan, founder, CEO, Alta Dispensary, Lower Manhattan. Good morning, Vanessa. How you living? Coming from the Big Apple. How we doing today?
Great, wonderful. Ready for the summer.
I appreciate you joining us here today, Vanessa. We don't personally know each other until this phone call. I've been into New York a number of times. I hadn't come across you guys. I believe you guys are, not to say new, but a newer dispensary compared to my timeline of visits. And it's wonderful to meet you. I looked through the website. I looked a little bit through the Instagram, and you can tell that this is a vibe. You have created a real cannabis vibe, women-owned, women-founded, operated, a lot of intentionality into the experience there. And so, Vanessa, it's a pleasure to have you today. Talk to me. Alta, how did you get into that, Vanessa? What were you doing before Alta? How did you get into that? What's your cannabis story like, and how did you get into this beautiful dispensary opportunity that you're operating now?
Yeah. So I started back, like we could go back, and so
as far back as you're willing to share. Some of
as
these
far as I
people,
can share, for sure.
yeah.
So basically, back in 2020, like really looking at COVID hitting and all that stuff, and I was planning on doing something else with, some of the monies that I had. What was happening during that time as a small business landlord in New York City, we had a building there, and retail was dying. It was really challenging to put anything in there. I knew legalization was going to happen in 2021, so I really started researching cannabis. And the reason why I kind of came to cannabis was like late in my 30s. I started kind of microdosing and using it for sleep and anxiety, and
Okay.
and any of those, kind of for women's issues
Yeah.
and things like that. So kind of putting those two things together and really researching it, the building itself was dying. My grandparents were refugees from Mozambique, Africa, and they kind of this was their first building that they bought with all the money that they had to kind of escape during communist Mozambique and the military coup during that time. They fled, left everything they had. They brought whatever they had, and they bought this building. And this is kind of one of those legacy buildings that my grandparents were like, never sell.
Cool.
So for me to sustain something, I was like, it's hard. The climate for retail is really, really challenging in New York City. So, and having owned another small business, I was really coming into them thinking, what can I put in here that would, maybe generate some income, and, so that I wouldn't have to sell the building, so that I can make major capital improvements. And so this was kind of my solution, bringing my own passion, personal passion, and my how I founded cannabis in my own life, and bringing that together with, putting a space in the building. So from that, it really came into where, I, as a user, like, how would I want to shop? And I really wanted just like kind of a makeup store for weed. I wanted that intentionality, the interactiveness. So we have smell jars that you can really use to pick up and interact with the product. You could see everything that you're getting. So all these things, all these little touches and details, even like a checkout line, like a Sephora style checkout line, I really wanted to put in, because this is how I would want to shop.
100%.
So really kind of focusing, targeting women, thinking that this is the new, a newer market. And as you may have heard, women are the highest rising consumer for cannabis, and really leaning into it. But for me, it was more about a passion project that I wanted to really dedicate to women and wellness. And, we also have obviously higher THC levels, and we have the range from, for the canna-curious, as they're calling them, to the seasoned,
the heady connoisseurs, the snobs,
yes,
the weed snobs.
Exactly. But, like, there is a market and a niche for everything, like it is a very saturated market. We have many dispensaries right around us, that right outside my 1,000-foot radius, as per New York regulations, it's only 1,000 radius, where we can set up shop. And so to differentiate myself, I already just leaned into the women thing, and really kind of honed in on that. And, and I do, 6 to 7 months events per month to really support that and
Yeah.
community engagement. So really focus on the Chinatown community, my community. I was, born and raised in the area, kind of, and really wanted to kind of prop that up with like using this business to do community outreach programs, and and so partnering with nonprofits that really support just the Chinatown local areas. So really a kind of a nod to my grandmother, who was a huge part of the community, and she attended a lot of senior citizen stuff and a lot of the community events, and really kind of giving back to
Yeah.
the neighborhood. So yeah.
Building community is a big part of different cultures. It's not always huge in America. It's often a part of the diversity cultures here in America. Like these different communities that aren't always the face of America. Oftentimes are the most people putting themselves out there to go find other people that are like them, like your grandma, looking for other people in Chinatown to go hang out, do these things and whatnot. And I found that to be true, whether it's Costa Rica or in Los Angeles with the different communities that are out there. And in New York, very diverse area, one of arguably the most in America, some would say. I think it's incredible to see that you've been able to keep that building in the family and turn it into something that is so forward thinking for what, like, if you look back to what they got here to where it is now, never would have been something that anybody was thinking about, would have been impossible. And to see you doing that, I think that's inspirational in so many ways. Hopefully other people, see you doing that. Women hopefully see you doing that and decide that they want to come in and be a part of that, whether it's participating or maybe doing one of their own and launching another Alta. I can't help but notice, though, one of my mom's favorite stores. You mentioned somewhere called Sephora. I've been there. I was actually trained by people in Sephora to run a dispensary back in the day. But Alta sounds like Ulta. I think isn't Ulta a women centric store at a lot of malls across America and have their own locations too? Was that on purpose, or what does Ulta mean to you? How did that name come about, or was it a play on the Ulta store?
No, so basically, Alta comes from, it comes from my Portuguese heritage,
Okay.
because my grandparents and my father and my aunts and uncles were born in Mozambique. So it is a Portuguese colony. So growing up, and being growing up, we had to know three languages growing up:
Wow.
English, Chinese, and Portuguese.
Wow.
So, like, for example, my father lives in Portugal right now. Like, he's been
Mhm.
there for 5 years or so. And so it was really, my grandma only spoke Chinese and Portuguese. So growing up, it was the integration and the mix between all the
Wow.
cultures, really focusing on that and stuff like that. So it was, really important to kind of, as a nod to her legacy as well, really incorporating all of that into, and that's why I chose that, because it was a little different. Not knowing that, there was going to be another district, because we really opened up at the same time.
Mm.
So there was, because there is a similar dispensary with that name. And, so I, at that point couldn't change it. And, I just stuck with it. But it was just really more because, because of my strong, Portuguese heritage, and family and
I
ties to
love
that.
that you pay so much respect to the culture and the history that you have and that your family has. I think that's something that a lot of people should think and care more about. And there's another one of the reasons why people should be supporting you guys, because of that respect and that ode to your history and culture. Now, Vanessa, what you mentioned that, like, a landlord to businesses and things like that. You alluded to that at the beginning of the convo. Are you a business owner operator outside of cannabis too? Do you do things outside of the cannabis world, business wise? Seems like you might be like you're a multifaceted person.
Yes. So, in terms of cannabis, really started in the industry back in 2020 when I started researching a lot of this stuff. I started volunteering for a lot of the organizations, just showing up to the organizations, and I decided to kind of be a part of the Cannabis Association of New York. And back in 21, and really started going to their events. And then I became New York City regional chair for Cannabis Association in New York. And that's how, kind of, because I wasn't in cannabis
Mm,
previously, it was how I grew my network. So I started
yeah.
hosting about 12 to 14 events in 2022 to 23, and really to kind of like bring the network to me. So putting on banking webinars, putting on, things. So helping other entrepreneurs develop their businesses and their openings, but at the same time growing my own, network and contacts,
Yeah.
because I'd be like, oh, I know the banker because I just put a banking panel together. Who are the, I kind of
Mm-hmm.
vetted in and kind of researched who was doing, cannabis focused services and ancillary services, and even just like, just those, those simple things like security, all those things that I would need to operate and own a dispensary. So as I was, educating other people, I was also learning myself, and just questions that like
Yeah.
even moderator that I can just pull up, because I think a lot of there was a lack of support and education to a lot of the early retailers, because there was just no access, and nobody knew where to go for things because cannabis was so specific and not everyone carried it. Insurance doesn't always carry a cannabis; it has to be specific ones. So, really doing my research to kind of get those people on panel discussions and even just events. Gathering people to just have
Yeah.
events, and also having like an initial like kind of a buyers club like back in 2022, right when the card program was released, and having it in like this small space, 16 vendors in in Long Island City. I had Heirloom there, I had No Wave there, there were some of the original processors who were there, and that's when I started developing my relationship with them, so really. And then as I started, and then when I opened, it was simple as hey, I already interviewed you guys or did stuff with you guys 2 years ago, and it was that continuation of the relationship. So
Yeah.
really establishing that, and then so now I'm also now just starting a new retail alliance just for operational retail dispensaries to join, to kind of influence some regulatory and legislative issues that we're having. And I'm one of the founding members. It's Cannabis Retail Alliance of New York, Franny, and it's headed up by Jeremy Turprose, Koss from Conbud, Zamia from Big Gas and up in New Paltz, and Matt Robinson from Legacy Dispensary up in
Yeah.
in Albany. So really kind of coming together, because it is very political. It is very, I think in order to kind of push, and preserve what we have, and to kind of make a sustainable future, we have to come together to kind of really start and, voicing our issues in directly, with a lobbyist, directly to the regulators
Yeah.
and legislators.
If they can see that there are patterns with the problems and trials and struggles that you guys are having,
Yeah.
and then they're starting to hear about possible solutions over and over again, a pattern of repetition there as well, then that's how we're going to start to see change happen quicker and across a variety of topics and issues, right?
Yeah, consistency in numbers,
Yeah.
so like, it's just that pounding the thing. It's like, is this, something, that needs to be pushed through or not? Or, where there are some compromises that we can come
Yeah.
and talk, in a
This
way
isn't
that
just a Queens issue. This isn't just a Brooklyn issue. It's a lower Manhattan. It's a lower East Side. It's
it's
a
a
Queens.
statewide.
It's a
It's a
state. It's a
statewide.
it's all, yeah. There's a lot of things that it could be pockets, but if they start getting wind, or if they start hearing testimonial about these things across the breadth of the state, I think that's gonna, like you said, consistency across. That will be huge.
Exactly.
Um,
Mhm.
Now, I think that's what we've talked a little bit about your background. We've talked a little bit about what you've been up to. This new alliance sounds really interesting. Let's focus in and hone in a little bit more on Alta, shall we?
Yeah.
I think, like you said, you alluded to the fact that there's a bunch of dispensaries around you. I think New York has over 3, or probably approaching 300 now, seemingly. Um, I've started to hear brands talk about some of some issues that are consistent. We've talked about retail now a little bit with some of similar issues. What did you, in your opinion, what was the hardest thing you had to overcome to get online, to become operational, open for business? What was the one thing that was just so tough for you that really stands out? And is that something that you wish would be changed, or is that just kind of like it is what it is at this point?
Unfortunately, I think that the challenging part was the licensure itself. I
Mm,
think the delays in some of the injunctions, it's the waiting game. And in the meantime, a lot of the, fellow licensees, the issues with them is like, the time, if you have a spot and you're paying rent, and
yeah.
you're delayed and delayed and delayed. So it's just,
Capital times delays is a funky situation.
Absolutely. So like it's always challenging with when you have the regulatory, like every licensee that I spoke to has had a challenge with getting their license. Even after, like, it's not an easy step to just get approved from the get-go. There's always some deficiencies that need to be resolved, but not even that. Some like kind of not data that's out there that the OCM is not aware of, that the licensee needs to push back on or to investigate themselves to prove the latter, to prove
Yeah.
the contrary to what they're making a decision on. So I think that's the biggest part, because they're just not as they don't have the staff to kind of validate every type of claim that is out there.
Mm.
And so the issue, it really falls on the licensee to push back and to really, fight, like, hey, there isn't anybody located right in this building, in this, where if you're violating proximity
Yeah. They
protection.
got to do, there's more nuances to the telling of the story to prove the validation versus their automatic disprove.
Yes,
There's something. This
exactly.
list says this information and it's 4 years old. They're
Right.
going, yeah, that kind of stuff. Right.
Exactly, where it could be something. So there's a lot of outdated data out there that the OCM is using as a reference to kind of validate or, approve some of these applications. So that's
Yeah.
that, and I heard that across the way. So that is, I think, the biggest challenge. I mean, everything else, like once that green light went ahead, then it was like, okay, build, build, build,
Yeah.
build. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, what I would recommend for a lot of people would be to, plan on as much as you can, during this downtime, like plan. How are you going to execute the store? Anything, develop SOPs, develop maybe a website if you know that you're close to that things. I mean, if it's something that's not costly that you can like maybe handle in terms of like build out as much as you can, start your, even so develop some marketing strategies in the beginning as you wait, so that you can really help with, moving along, so that once you do get approval for a license, that you can just be like, go.
Yeah.
And that stuff can be, and you can focus on building out the operations and, the store layout itself, because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made after when you start building,
Mhm.
and you're laying out your store, so I had that challenge. I mean, but for me, I always intended my store to be mood based, so how you want to feel. So
Yeah.
I knew the style, so as I was thinking of that, I was already developing the design, the feeling of the store. I wanted it to be, light and airy, and, and really kind of work with reading what the regulations are, and also kind of converting it to how I can execute it in a very non intrusive way for the customer and very comfortable. So instead of putting a wall somewhere, I instead put a metal mesh curtain to kind of
Mm.
separate the check-in area to the back, and still having a clear glass in the front with no
Yeah.
frosting. Because I was also, thinking of, hey, like they can't see the product, but they can see in, and it's a clear glass. It's not frosted, and it's not hidden, and they
Yeah.
can see into the store without actually seeing the product. So the OCM was like, yep, that's great. It works. And it's just like a soft material versus,
Yeah.
so like really thinking of those different kind of nuances to really, and those details really make a difference for, I think, the customer, because everyone that comes in is like, it feels like a spa. And I was like, that's exactly what I want it to be, because we doesn't have to be like house music and pump all the time. Obviously there are clientele that does that, but like a lot of the, both people who are connoisseurs of the plant, and who are, they're like, they love it because they're like, yeah, this is just calming, and weed just makes me want to chill. So,
Yeah.
it's, and that, we have that kind of, we have even like scent diffusers in there, with that
Yes.
oils to kind of really come in, and it really comes in and relaxes you. Because, for me, even with the wellness events that I do have, it's that supporting of like, I have yoga, I have breath work, and how to integrate the, cannabis into your yoga practice, or your,
Mhm.
your meditation practice. Because that's what I do, so it's really those little things that I think, kind of makes us stand out a little bit from, just selling weed,
Yeah.
for me, it's about the
It's
intention.
not like you said. They don't all just have to be a box in a building, right? And
Mhm.
different shaped boxes, great, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever, like. But toss some staff in there, hire a bunch of local kids, right? Whatever it is, turn on some rap music. You said house, same difference, right? At the end of the day, like
Mm-hmm.
they don't all have to be the same thing. I like those. I'm sure that like there's a time and place for that, right? But we start talking about like where's the best place for me to introduce somebody to cannabis? Well, anybody that I know is into health and wellness and has a calm energy, like I don't think I'm bringing them into the place that's bumping West Coast Snoop Dogg, you
Yeah.
know, fuck this, fuck that. You know what I'm saying? West Side, like I'm not necessarily bringing my grandma to those environments. You know what I mean? And I think that at some point, like I want to be able to make these recommendations or go there myself. Like if I'm gonna go shopping for my mom or for the women in my life, I want to go somewhere that I know that I'm gonna put myself in their frame, like where they want to go, where they would like want to visit, where they would physically put themselves. And I think that's amazing that you have these different things at your shop that really separates it. Whether it is from the viewpoint through the windows, which everybody frosted, or they slap up those huge brand stickers all over them. Right here, wrap my windows, brand out my whole dispensary to look like a Bud Light meets weed, liquor store. Right, and it's
Yep.
like no, we don't all have to do that. We can do them so many. There's so many different ways to have an attractive look outside, and then also to do things inside. What are some of the other we'll say variables, factors, additions, these creative nuances that you have inside your dispensary that you feel really makes it either special or stand out or establish that spa
Yeah.
vibe that you deliver?
So, we don't have any kiosks. So that was my intention from the beginning. We have no kiosks. Everything has to be, you have to speak to a bud tender, to kind of get your product. And so that also guides people, to the right product for
Mm-hmm.
them. Everything is interactive in terms of we don't have any secret menus or anything like that. Everything is displayed on the floor. So, and including from the edibles to the flour to the vapes, everything is on these lock tethered jars
Mm-hmm.
or stands that you can pick up, you can explore, you can see exactly what's in the packaging. So everything in the packaging is out. So you can see how many you get, what the gummies look like, what the flour looks like. You can smell them. You can even smell the flavor of the edibles. So you can kind of see, oh, this is going to be like a peach mango, or this is going to be a ginger. You can kind of smell that as you're, smelling those jars. So that is, definitely, on top of that, we also have a lot of educational pieces. We have a minor
Cool.
cannabinoid bar. So you can
Wow.
explore like so we 3D printed the minor cannabinoids, their molecular structures, and then we put them in a little bar, and then you can read like what does like CBD do, and how does that help, and how does the entourage effect with THC, and how that can enhance your high versus where versus just straight THC. So really, kind of
Yeah.
education is a really big part of it. In our center column, we have like little display boxes of what is a vape, what accessories you need with a vape, what's a 510 cart versus
Oh, I love that idea. I've never been in a store that tells me what accessories I need depending on what product I have available to me. That's
right.
so smart. That's cool.
Even
I
just the
like that.
flour, what's a grinder, what
Yes.
the concentrates, what's a dab
So
rig.
many people skip over those basics because we all just assume. But I can't tell you. Like I just started helping out at a lounge here in over in West Los Angeles,
Hmm.
and they don't know how to use anything.
Yeah.
People don't know how to use it. They're buying weed and they're literally just using a pipe and they're just
Yeah.
ripping chunks of nug and sticking it in the pipe.
Yeah. So it's just those little things that, like, that didn't take up that much space. I'm
No,
actually, I
yes.
just used a column that I couldn't move. I created like this kind of thing, and I built in these boxes personally. So a lot of the stuff too is like I did my brother.
Are you crafty, Vanessa? You be making stuff and putting things together? Yes, I love it. That's
So
dope.
these kind of centerpieces, along with so, and also with my brother, who helped, he's a metal fabricator, so he helped
Oh,
design
cool.
a lot of the things. So we created these boxes, literally their hotel pans that I spray painted, and it looks great. If you see the pictures, you could see that they're just hold, what is a tincture, what's the onset time, what's the peak, what's the duration. So each of these categories on the modalities of consumption are outlined in my store, and you can see what where do you start, where do you start your journey, and
So
then
we can. I
just
actually have. I'm pulling up your website right now. I've got this beautiful photo here on the
yeah.
right.
Yeah, so
Uh,
that little bit column in the center, we have the minor cannabinoid board, which is unfortunately on the opposite side of that. But also these little boxes here have each one has a type of way to consume. So from
cool.
suppositories to tinctures to edibles to flour to and to vapes to pre-rolls, and just to kind of, and then what accessories you may need to consume that, so whether it
Wow.
be a grinder, rolling papers, things like that, examples of them and labeled so that they can see, like, this is what you may need to kind of consume this, and these are the onset,
Yes.
these are the effects, this is the potency levels. So it's
Yes.
really consistent across the board. Like, you're going to have edibles that are going to be much stronger, and versus, some of the other stuff that's going to be a little bit lower. So it's really important that I was educating people in that way, and having that on there. And the other thing is that everyone leaves with a dosing chart. So how, like, just what are the rules in New York to consume, as well as, where do you start your journey?
That's
Just
smart. That's smart.
whatever
Yeah.
one it's a kind of a one piece. It's on my education page as well, so you can see, like, kind of that information, and all of that is on there. So really for me is
You're just
really
adding value in it, all these different points of the experience for you guys. Whereas the exit bag, typically, if it is branded at all, you're barely lucky to get a phone number or a social media on there,
yeah,
right? Let alone an email, which
yeah.
would all be valuable in case there's any problems. And then, or inside, you're barely lucky to get a business card that says the same thing again, if you're lucky, or maybe stamps, like a little stamp thing or whatever. It depends on the state you're in. But like what you're saying is you're providing the rules to keep them safe and educational guidance to the people that may or may not need it. Plus, I'm sure there's the branded information on there because you guys are well branded across the
Yeah.
board. So it's
Mhm.
like that right there, folks. For those of you guys watching, that's called checking off all the things and making sure you're delivering a top notch experience. This is fantastic, and I just want to shout out too the diffusers inside. I was going to ask you. I know there's got to be a custom smell. What are the What's the smell? What's Vanessa's terpene palette for those diffuser
It's
smells?
actually a white tea, so it's like a jasmine white tea
Yes.
that we're sending out to the store, and everyone comes in, they're like, "Oh god, it smells great in here." And that's like the first introduction to that, and
Yeah.
just, that in and itself is like part of that, where the experience is taking in from the beginning to the end, really, like that's when they say, they start with that, as a when they first come into the store, to the ends where they get the dosing chart and they get that
Yeah.
information, and like free matchboxes that are branded, things like that. So all that
Woo!
process, and what we like to do is that when we take the customer into the store after we check them in, we explain the store, we give them a tour, like, this is how you want to feel. It's basically rest, chill, relief, focus, and vibes. So you go from indicas, hybrids, sativas. So
Yeah.
that's how the store's laid it out. Then it goes each shelf. If you could see in the thing, top shelf are all vapes, mid shelf are all flower and pre roll, and the bottom are all edibles. So it's
Okay.
very organized in terms of, like, they can self explore. All the highlights about every product is on price tags, including tax. So it has like what strain type it is, what the dosage is per piece, and just the brand and the name, so
Yeah.
that they can just see, like, they can self-explore, and if they need help, we're happy to step in for a recommendation. But a lot of times people just love just kind of picking up stuff, picking up jars, smelling them, moving around the store, and it's kind of self-exploration, and that's what we encourage in the store.
I really appreciate how you've entirely dissected and ripped apart the top shelf, middle shelf, bottom shelf categorical assumptions that cannabis forces onto people. The quality, you know what I'm saying? Oh, this is the top shelf weed, or this is the expensive stuff's up here, and this and that. I can't. It drives me nuts going into dispensaries and being forced to shop that way, where where the weeds organized that way, and then all the categories, and then I got weed, vape, edible, this and that. Like, I like that you've done it, that you've been committed to the moves, because I feel like the customers that would shop at your store, the women that they're going to shop based on where they're going to use their weed and how it's going to be used, the impact, the value that it delivers. They're thinking about those things. They're not walking in thinking, oh yeah, indica sativa hybrid, this, that.
Exactly.
They're over here thinking, yo, I need a vape because I'm trying to this. I need a edible because I'm trying to, we both are using edibles for sleep, for example. Like
Yep.
we're looking for, we go category first and then we go based on what it's trying to do. And I like the ability I like the ability to choose for myself, but also how you've organized it and curated it for the guests. I like that, and that's definitely something that I feel like a lot of people should pay more attention to, and how they present the products. Merchandising, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, how you merchandise your items is unique to your guys' customer base. I feel like, and
Absolutely.
you
And
have
then
to.
also think about it too, like a lot of the other stores do focus on brands, right? So like
Mhm.
brand features. So we don't have any of that. So we don't use any of the promo materials from the brands. And basically what, because I thought that like the New Yorkers are not going to know, being introduced, from the beginning, they're not going to know the brands.
Mm.
So why organize it by brands if there's no way to do that? Why don't we organize it by how you're going to use it and how
And
you
doesn't that create also too, by doing that, like
equity,
a bottleneck for each situation? Because
right?
if the bigger the brand, the bigger the money, the more you show, the better the relationship. What about the other brands? How
Right.
does there a balance of sell through? If I've got better margin on these items over here, I'm supposed to take 5K from this other brand over here worth the free stuff that they give me, and then my budtenders only push that, and then I'm stuck with this over here going bad. It's
Exactly.
it's a for me it's a bad sales cycle for to have that. It's a bad culture, retail culture to get, and it's a trap to fall
Yeah.
into them.
And
It's a
it's like, and it also takes the pressure off of a lot of the, even just the customer buying the ones that say, big, flashing lights on this side versus the small brand that, I do for feature some micros in my store. So, some New York craft cannabis kind of thing.
yeah.
And so like, having them on even playing field across the way with, Matter or some Dank, and things like the bigger brands and stuff like that. So that gives them an even playing field so that they can explore based on THC level, price point,
See,
and
that's
just
some
talk.
real New York culture integrity right there. That's
Yeah.
some real integrity of really supporting those smaller craft legacy brands, because everyone says that they want to do that, or that they try to do that,
Hmm.
but ultimately, what's that? There we go. Ultimately, what ends up happening though is they end up just working with those big ones that we were just talking about, and it ends up
Yeah.
being around the cycle of. And I love. I'm here for those dank pre rolls. I'm here
Yeah.
for heirloom drinks. I even like the heirloom vapes, the distillate vapes that everyone loves.
Yeah.
Their plum gummies are fire. I'm here for all of the big dog stuff too, and they're family owned, operated with crazy cool history too. Both
Yeah.
that group specifically. So it's like I'm here for all those big stores, but at the same time, I definitely enjoy spending 10, 20, 40. Like the times when a small farmers market company can get $50 out of me, I'm more excited about that product than
Hmm.
anything I spend $50 at Costco. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
Costco thing, $50. It's in. I consume it. It's done. The farmers market thing, that's $50. I'm keeping forever. It's a
Hmm.
big difference. The attachment that I have to that style of company, and especially on the story. And so, props to you for that. Vanessa, do you have a buyer, or are you the buyer? Who's curating the menu for you guys? How does that work for you?
It's a very team effort. So I do have a buyer, Sharon. She's my buyer and inventory
Shout out
manager.
Sharon.
However, she is, we kind of make decisions together, and we get a lot of samples, and so I always distribute to my staff, and we have a Google form like, hey, you're
Nice.
required to review 10 a month, and so based on their opinions, and that's how we kind of get our product in the store. The
Cool.
bartenders are the forefront of the things. They're going to be recommending it, they're going to be smoking it, so they're going to be knowing, more knowledge based on there. So all the samples I give away to my staff, and they basically get these packages every month about like new products that we're thinking of things. And for me, it's also about rotations of, in and out of products, so like giving everyone a chance. So although we may not, we do one went through one run cycle with, one brand, doesn't mean we're not going to carry them back, that they're done forever. It's just that we're
Yeah.
trying rotate in some of the small. So we have our staples, but then we also have the smaller brands that are kind of rotating in based on, availability, because also it's hard, challenging with the menu.
And seasonal products is a thing. Like these edible companies have new flavors. The smaller flower groups, they're harvesting and cropping, not all the time, but they're definitely doing things a little bit more. At least from what I've noticed, they're kind of R&Ding more stuff to figure out what
Yes.
their staples become. Because if they have one bad crop in the staple, then they're screwed, right? Because it's such a small
Exactly.
crop.
And the market is leaning more towards, and what's interesting that I'm seeing is that the market is leaning more towards that mood-based feeling. So
Mhm.
already brands are coming out with these like mood-based, even Heirloom with the vapes. They have Calm, they have they have their vapes that are intentionally with those minor cannabinoids and can kind of give those effects for you. So that's easy for me, because now I'm like, oh, this is a sleep one, just stick it there. This is for
Yeah.
relief and pain relief, this is right there. Even Jaunty's doing some stuff, so everyone is starting to kind of get the idea of using minor cannabinoids to kind of in creating product lines that are geared towards that mood base, and it really fits in with what the style of my store. So that's really helping with that as well, now that more people are leaning into it.
The popularity of sleep products over the last 3 to 5 years has exploded. It
Mm-hmm.
started off with high THC and grape flavored things with maybe a little bit of CBN in it, or just a 1-to-1. Now we're seeing all the way to 1-to-1 to ones. We're seeing THC, CBD, and CBN. We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing different ratios of that. We still get the melatonin products too here and there. What products do you have curated for sleep specifically, as that is one of the largest categories and reasons why people use cannabis? What are some of your favorite sleep products at Alta today, Vanessa?
We really like, so for pill form, love 1906, because
Yep,
that's
1906 crushes. Yep.
but we some of the smaller New York brands that we had that are great, like New York Finca is a really great brand. They have a great, and they're Latino owned, so it's very their flavors is like maracuya and passion. So they have like these different
Oh
agave,
wow.
so really distinctive, the combination of distinctive flavors with the potency of their edibles. Really, people are really coming up with really novel ways of and novel flavors, not just the blueberries. So
Yeah.
those, the ones for me, those stand out a little bit more, just because they're doing a little bit something different. We also have off hours, which is also great, and then we also have the Caminos and that things. But as far as for tinctures, head and heel, for
Mm-hmm.
sleep. And then, I would say like New York Finca for flavor profile, and Eaton Botanicals as well. So those are, and
Yep.
Eaton Botanicals,
I've heard of Eaton Botanicals out of those groups. I've seen them at a bunch of different locations.
yeah, and Eaton Botanicals is great because they do have like some more focused for women in general, and also like they have 2.5 milligram gummies, a lemon
Yeah.
lavender, which is a really excellent, it's a
Ooh, that sounds tasty.
interesting flavor. And we have OHO with good night dots and good morning says with grapefruit yuzu. So flavoring, I mean, I think it's
Grapefruit yuzu.
yeah, grapefruit yuzu. And then their gal pals, which actually helps with a lot of women who come in for period pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's their watermelon brand, and they have some that it has higher levels of CBD that really help with that. So all these
Yeah.
like little interesting kind of nuances that people are introducing are really interesting, and really kind of getting the market to be a lot more competitive and differentiation.
New
Like
York with the innovation, baby. New Yorkers have always been innovators across so many different industries, right? In cannabis, that same creativity, that same passion for solving problems, but also too, we're all consumers here in America, man. We're trained to do it from an early age, right? Like we're creating these fun flavors, and it's cool because they're creating, like you said, they're creating flavors that you might not always see, right?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
with styles that are unique to New York City. I think that's incredible. Now,
Mhm.
before we get you out of here, Vanessa, I want to say thank you for being a guest on the episode today. It's been great to learn about you, what we've been able to gather. But I always like to end the episodes by giving my guests the floor to talk about something that's important to them. It could be promoting something you guys have coming up this weekend or next week, whatever it is, holiday, summer season, whatever it is there. Or it could be just something that you want people to stand for, or maybe something you want to see changed in the industry. And so, Vanessa, big shout out to you. Thank you for joining. Big shout out to our sponsor, Trees, the homies, for allowing us and paying for these episodes to happen. But the floor is yours. And again, I appreciate you for your time
Yeah,
today.
for sure. I mean, I think the most important is like, come visit the store. I think we have so many events that are, supporting the community. Our next up in June is Drag Dim Sum. We're partnering with
Ooh,
Heart of Dinner, which is Heart of Dinner, and Stone Road, which is an LGBTQ brand. They're be doing giveaways, and we're doing dim sum from local Chinatown, restaurants. And Heart of Dinner is our new nonprofit organization that we're partnering with, and they do a gift a meal for the elderly, for low income elderly people in
wow,
China. So,
that's
and they
huge.
work with local restaurants. So, and one of the restaurants that we're partnering with will be one of their partners as well. So it's all this kind of, togetherness and community. So for me, it's just about educating people and bringing everyone, from the marginalized to the mainstream, and really introducing it. My demo is not necessarily the legacy people, because most of them have dealers. My demographic is going to be the new canna-curious, and the new consumer, as well as like those legacy people. I would love to have them there, but obviously we skew a little bit more for the introduction of cannabis to your life.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with around that, Vanessa, and I look forward to the day when, and I don't say this to be rude, but we're not having to dance around that little bit of legacy, oh this, and carry them. You
Exactly.
look, legacy folks, we love you, but you're
Yeah.
not the only ones out there. And this store, although it's for you and we welcome you to Alta, I encourage you to visit. You know what I'm saying? Place your pickup order on altadispensary.nyc right now. But we care right now in this instance about bringing people in. We want to be around long term. We want to continue to grow. We want people like Vanessa to continue to inspire and be successful and create opportunities and turn these old buildings from these family members into successful opportunities for other people to have jobs and to pay taxes and to contribute to the local economies and things like that. But to do that, it can't just be a bunch of local legacy people, man. It's going to take more than that. Now, we need y'all to understand that. And to you new kind of curious people out there, or to you people that, maybe you're dealing with an illness, maybe you're dealing with, PTSD or a depression, or maybe you just want to get up and get your butt outside. I tell you, man, there's a vape there or a gummy that will improve your day. Matter of fact, there's a lot of stuff that she just talked about that'll improve your evenings too.
Yeah.
Right? Sleep.
Absolutely.
If we get better sleep, we get better. We get better life experiences. We have better energy. We end up being healthier overall. You end up being friendlier and happier, and so many amazing things happen because of better sleep. And so, if I can have impact from this episode, I encourage you guys to visit Alta Dispensary. Make sure you guys go check them out. Chinatown, Lower Manhattan, man. Make sure y'all pop in, reach out. If you're a brand, get your samples over there. Make sure y'all come ready. Don't come in there with this high THC, whatever it is. Like, can't come in ready to and understanding the brand. Do your research. Watch the episode. Vanessa, it's been a pleasure to have you, man. I really appreciate
Thank
you for
you.
joining today. Big shout out
Appreciate
our sponsor, Trees. For those of you guys watching, be sure to tap in, man. New York Cannabis Podcast. We do this every single month. Make sure y'all tap in, like, follow, subscribe, visit altadispensary.nyc, and we'll catch you